Theatre Ad Infinitum is a Bristol-based theatre company that specialises in devised theatre that examines social and political themes. Its latest production, Bucket List, was previewed recently at Latitude Festival, where I saw it, but now opens officially in its final form at the 2016 Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I spoke to director Nir Paldi during the first week of the Fringe, and I asked him to explain what Bucket List was about.
Bucket List is about, I guess the theme of the show is the consequences, what happens when big politicians and corporations sign different trade agreements, and then we are looking at how it affects the little people that have to live with what that means, the rights that they lose and the corruption that comes with it, and just how the system crushes the small person, and how this small person might be able to achieve justice for themselves within a society that, unless you have a lot of money, justice it doesn't come for granted. So it tells the story. That's the kind of the theme of the play. And the story is of an orphan Mexican girl in a very poor neighborhood. Her mom is an activist, and she gets shot in the head by people who wanted her to stop protesting against pollution that they are causing in the town. Then Milagros kind of carries on with her life until different things happen to her, and she decides to carry on her mom's journey, but in a very specific way. She turns into violence. But then, at the same time, the play deals with what's real and what's not, and what stories are just stories and what stories are based on reality. So we also ask this question, and we never quite 100% know whether she actually takes revenge and executes her violence, or is it just an hallucination that she's experiencing through kind of painkillers that she's taking, because she also suffers from cancer. So yeah, it's quite a complex story to tell, quite an epic story of revenge, I guess.
Yeah, well, I saw one of the previews of it at Latitude, and it came across to me as being, it's the story of a serial killer, but one in which you actually sympathise with the killer. And there are lots of different issues that come up, and it's not just the big corporations that are taking advantage of the girls in the factories. It's the people in those countries as well who have a little bit of power. So it's quite complex, isn't it, the power struggles?
Yeah, I mean, what I was really interested, because the idea for the play was pitched to me by my long-standing collaborator and the star of the show, so to speak, Pierre, who is Mexican. We've made a couple of shows together before, and she had this idea of the kind of based on the saying in Mexico, where people are so desperate with the situation and how unjust it is, and how unlikely they are to get to feel that they are backed and guarded by their government. So they say sometimes to one another, if one day I'll get cancer, I will shoot a politician. It's like so this is something that is commonly being said, apparently, and so she based on this kind of saying, she had this idea of this girl taking justice to her own hand and kind of examining the question of this is such an unfortunate circumstances of life, and yeah, we are so fortunate here in the West and are so unfortunate. But if you examine things, you very clearly see that what we call fortune, but it's not because of luck. It's because people took steps to make sure that one part of the world is rich, and another part of the world is poor, and it's like there are limited resources in the universe. So, we live very comfortably on the backs of the other people that are living very uncomfortably. So, so what we wanted to examine is that, but not only I was interested in looking at the global system, not only the countries within themselves, but also between countries, and then how it sits in to the country itself. So I feel like because of globalization, things are not played, country by country, but rather the elite within Mexico is also benefiting from the abuse and the usage of the the poor people essentially of Mexico, alongside the multinationals and the American government and the British government and other Western countries, etc. So yeah, it is an extremely complex system to explore. As we were developing the play, we were kind of the way we work is we run a period of rehearsal of development process, and then we expose the work even in very, very early stages. So let's say after 3 weeks of creation, and we invite audiences in to feedback us, and we kind of get an idea of what this is saying and whether it raises the issues that we wanted to raise or not. And then we go back to the room, develop further, and then we have a break with rehearsal in the studio, and the person leading, in this case myself, puts it in front of the computer, and kind of start creating some sort of a base for a script, and then we go back to the studio for another month or so, and then another break, and then again. So this process span over 15 weeks in the studio, which is quite long compared to other theatre processes, and during which we tried to create a narrative that would somehow be able to encompass like all those very complex issues faced by people, who are born into these circumstances of poverty and having to work 12, 13, 14-hour shifts with no breaks, getting paid just enough to get by, essentially, and how might they be able to get justice for themselves for so many injustices.
It's a story it's clearly important to you to tell this story, but what are you trying to give to the audience? Because we all hear about the stories. We know that when we buy products, that at some point in the chain somebody's being exploited, but we manage to put it out of our mind. Are you just trying to make people aware, or are you trying to make people take action, direct action about these issues?
Well, I think there are a few things like that I would like people to be kind of thinking about and discussing when they're leaving the theatre. One of them is the non-violent and violent action, because you just described Milagros as a serial killer, that the protagonist is a serial killer, which is it's valid description. Yeah. However, I always ask myself, what about the people that are signing those agreements and then causing the death of hundreds and thousands others?
Yeah.
And if not the death in a direct, obviously they don't pick up a gun and kill them, but essentially they are responsible for the death of millions sometimes. And even if they are not the one that signed it, they are then upholding those agreements. And what about all those heads of corporations that are employing people in such a way? And one of the pressures of being a kind of director of a company, bringing people with you to stay for a month, you experience, and in a very small scale, of course, like how it is to be responsible for people. So when I bring actors up to Edinburgh, I need to supply them with accommodation, etc., etc.,
yeah.
and they need to be happy, because they work for me and it's my responsibility. Do you know what I mean? So like this is a small glimpse. You get a glimpse of like, okay, if I expand it and I'm employing 1 million people globally, I have responsibility. And if what I do with this responsibility is cause early age death and diseases and suffering, I am responsible. And why am I less of a serial killer? And then if the system completely protects this bigger scale mass murder in certain ways, you could even call them, I'm sorry if I'm sounding extremist, then what is the right way of dealing with it? Because the system is defending them, and it's not right. I mean, so you can see how you can, and I think that the convenience in places like the UK and the West essentially is numbing us. So I'm interested in like entertaining violence, even if people would be going, oh, this is absolutely insane. Why are you suggesting murdering the president or the heads of states, or of course, which I'm of course not suggesting to do.
No.
But there is something in the unseen violence that we've become completely sedated to, of the powerful people and organizations, that when a small person is taking a violent action, it really stands out.
Yes.
But we never speak about the entrenched violence that is there in the system.
Yeah.
And I feel like, so this is something that I was very interested in talking about, and this is something that always interests me.
Yeah.
How do we make change? How do we change the system? How do we change our life if we are in a very weak position?
The system that you described of development, these 15 weeks of developing in rehearsals and devising and going back to an audience. What's the role of a director in a devised production? Is it different to a scripted one? Are you there more as an editor, or is there some particular role of a director in a devised production?
Yeah, I assume so. Basically, I am the director and the writer of the piece. So basically, I would come in with ideas for scenes, and I would describe a situation in this, like this, and this to pass. And then we just improvise and see what happens. And then I always describe it as a little bit evolutionary process, where the strongest ideas kind of survive. So you provide the outside eye, you provide the idea, the initiative for okay, let's play this. Let's improvise on that situation. And then if you've got talented actors that are themselves very opinionated and strong-minded and bold and fearless, then very quickly the room is on fire with ideas, and then you just need to kind of navigate it.
Yeah.
So you're directing it really, like telling it, maybe let's take it more to the left, maybe let's take it more to the right, and see where it gets us. And then you take the ideas that are flooding in the room and shape it into something, and then you expose it to the audience. You take on board the critics, the feedback, and then you go, and then you write based on what everybody else and yourself came up with, and then you take it to further development. I mean, that's the way we work. I think people do devised in many different ways.
Yeah. Is there a point, though, that you've got a script and you're rehearsing it like a conventional scripted play, and you said, well, that's it, we've got to rehearse what we've got, rather than trying to add new things?
We actually add new things. So in the 2 weeks that passed since we've seen it in Latitude until we opened in Edinburgh, we've made very significant changes. Following feedback that we received in this weekend of previews, we performed in York as well, in Oxford and in Latitude, and then we received lots of feedback from audiences and people who wrote their opinions online, and it became very clear where we should push further and what stands in people's way in terms of how to engage with the piece. So we basically developed it much further. We still rehearse like every day, even when the show is running already, because you constantly, when you expose it to the audience and you sit there with the audience, you can constantly feel, actually this would be more impactful in the way I want it to if it's played in this way. So we try not to change text at this stage already, because you want the performers to be, confident and on top of everything, rather than, it's a different place to be as an actor when you're still learning new things and getting your body used to them, rather than I'm now performing, and then as a director you can say, this moment you can stretch it a bit more, or you can go a bit faster on that. So it's much more execution notes rather than something more substantial than that. But I would say that we change until the very, very last moment. So
what are your own personal influences? I noticed you trained at Jacques Lecoq School and you worked with Ariane Mnouchkine in Paris. So you've got a fairly impressive background of your own training and past work and your current work. So what are your main influences that feed into this kind of work?
I think, everything the company does is very influenced mainly by Jacques Lecoq and the techniques that we learned, both myself and George Mann, the co-artistic director working with me on Theatre Ad Infinitum, and has been very heavily involved in this project as a movement director and a dramaturg. Everything was very much influenced by the way of looking at the world that you're learning from the Lecoq School. And obviously the movement, how essential the body is into telling a story, and how important it is to gravitate things in reality especially if you want to create a show that travels to an imaginary realm. So I would say, that the Shacklecock School is extremely influential. And then, as an artist, you always have your own kind of personality and who you are, and that leads you to paint things with a certain color, which I think, what really interested me is I think we all feel it sometimes, this feeling of this wasn't right, it's not fair, and we all have violent thoughts as well sometimes. As long as we are healthy, we don't act on them, But I was very interested in acknowledging that at the moment violence is so present, and being at the Fringe, there are quite a few shows that are dealing with terrorism, and it's really sad for me because coming from Israel, Europe was sort of a refuge from the presence of violence on a daily basis. Now you can see the shift in this, and you can see artists starting to react to that and making work about terror and violence, and it's very interesting for me to see that, and I am myself very interested in that. Seeing violence is here, it's part of human existence. So how do we talk about it? That's one of the things that drove me to make this piece.
So what's next for you and for Theatre Ad Infinitum?
We're actually traveling with our previous production, Light, to China. We're going to be there for 3 weeks. Before that, we're going to take Light again to Battersea Art Centre in October for another week. It's going to be its second run there. And then we will be touring Bucket List in the spring 2017 all over the country, and we are starting to work on a new piece that is going to be about deafhood, being deaf, and how this is a very, very young idea, but basically the ensemble will include deaf and hearing actors, and we will be exploring deafhood. So that's what's going to happen next year, and we might make another piece, maybe a little smaller this time, a couple of actors perhaps, hopefully to premiere in next Fringe.
For more information about Theatre Ad Infinitum, see www.theatreadinfinitum.co.uk. I'm at the King's Theatre in Edinburgh, where someone is emptying a lot of bottles at the moment, to interview Kato Flynn, who is starring in the Glass Menagerie at the moment, which is probably going to be the hottest show in the whole of the International Festival, and possibly the whole of Edinburgh. Kato Flynn is one of those actresses who just catches the attention whenever she's on stage. She started out, certainly the first time I saw her, I checked, was as far back as 2009, playing in A Miracle by Molly Davis. And I thought she was excellent back then, which is nice. And she just confirmed the impression ever since. For reasons that she might want to explain, she's tended to play tough northern women, for the most part, in plays such as Simon Stevens' Port at the National, Taste of Honey at the National, and she was also at the Young Vic in the Trial Richard Jones production. So lots. And she's done film, TV work too. So that's kind of the brief introduction. First of all, Kate, welcome.
Thank you.
You're in the Glass Menagerie. I take it you're playing Laura. I'm seeing it tonight.
I am playing Laura.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the role and the production here?
Yeah, sure. So playing Laura Wingfield, who I guess our take on it is, it's sort of a given with Laura that you get for free just from what you hear about her in the play, what other characters say, that she's fragile and is not someone that'd be able to function on her own in the outside world, and which is of course a huge worry for Amanda Wingfield, the mother. So who was played by Cherry Jones, Broadway royalty. Cherry Jones. You're playing with a lot of Broadway royalty in this one, to be fair. Oh my gosh, they're all Mike Leigh and Stephanie and Rich are also Broadway the heavyweights of New York theatre scene. But so a huge worry for Amanda. She's very shy. She doesn't talk to other people outside, her family. So that's all there in the circumstances. And I guess what we've explored is what else is there to her? Because you're not just, a person isn't just one thing. They're not just it was trying to get away from the idea that she's just a victim, or not to play the fact that she's a victim. She is anyway. So what we've kind of explored and what seems to be coming out is that she has a kind of strong will, actually, of her own, and a kind of, I don't know, maybe a steeliness to her that sort of surprised me. Yeah, and this amazing imagination. She has a big interior world that she inhabits because I think she feels things very deeply and gets affected by things very deeply, but also has these quite strong coping mechanisms with her Glass Menagerie and the Victrola that she can use. And when she's with the Glass Menagerie or she's playing those records, she can kind of escape into something else and drown out all that noise and panic of the outside.
Does this feel like a very different role for you, a different kind of character to be playing?
I don't know, I didn't really sort of analyse the roles. I guess there's something childlike about her, which I've played a lot of kids on stage. But yes, I think there is a difference. She's more fragile than most characters I play, or more obviously fragile. Although we mentioned a miracle, and that character Amy, in that was the Norfolk. It was set in Norfolk, wasn't it? And she worked in a chicken nugget factory, and she was quite vulnerable as well. But it's different, and of course, playing American, that has a different flavour to it.
I was going to ask, have you done that before?
I've just done it once. The first play I did was a children's hour, Lillian Hellman,
oh, right, yes.
At the Exchange in Manchester. But I haven't done American since, and obviously was really excited about getting the opportunity when John said, I want to do this show, and would you like to do it? And it was a no-brainer.
And this was an American repertory company production, so It did start off in America with Americans.
Yes, and it was a huge show on Broadway, and getting to do an American classic with American actors, with American heavyweight stage actors, was a real draw. But then on the first day when we started the read-through, I was really excited, but then hearing these guys just absolutely, because I think there is a difference in the way American actors and British actors in rehearsal room approach things. Yes. American actors are just there emotionally, immediately, and a lot of the time, I mean, it's a bit of a generalisation, but a lot of the time British actors will have their scripts until the last minute, and then they'll go for the emotion. So it was sort of jumping off off the deep end and really going for it, and hearing them read and be so brilliant. I thought, oh God, what's going to come out of my mouth in terms of the accent? And
did it help?
She's a bit of an enigma as well, Laura. I think she can take a lot of different interpretations of what she is, which I think brilliant, robust plays can take lots of different angles for the characters. And she's kind of enigmatic. So sort of plotting journey through that was interesting.
And did it help you with the American accent to be playing opposite Americans? It did.
Hopefully. You'll see tonight. I don't know, but
Well, here tonight.
Yeah, you're here tonight. It did. I mean, I was concerned that I had a dialect session before I started rehearsals, because one of my concerns is that you can get the accent, but you can also get stuck in a tune of the accent if it's not doesn't feel comfortable. So you're not actually in the moment, and you can end up saying things the same way each night, or just getting a bit stuck. And I was conscious that I didn't want that to happen, that I'd be able to be as playful as if I was doing it in my own accent. And I think being with American actors who we were in London, but I was the only Brit in that room for 4 weeks, and you sort of pick it up.
But then we say they're Americans, they have an American accent, but in fact I suspect that it's not their natural accent either. It'll be the same. You clearly from accent are from the north, I'm from the south. We don't have the same accent. We'd assume all Americans sound the same.
Yes, I mean, Cherry totally understands the south because she's from there, but she doesn't have as strong an accent as that. And Michael has changed his accent slightly because actually it's Midwestern. It's in St. Louis, so they're not. Laura and Tom aren't southern, but they will have picked up. John was interested in how. They call it in dialect terms code switching, where do you know that phrase? I don't. So code switching is when you your accent kind of changes depending who you're with, and what influence the southern accent would have on the kids, and when that comes my when it goes away, and when they go more Midwestern. So Michael's kind of played around with that, and he's got a sort of Southern lilt, and I've had a go.
I'm sure it's a lot better than just having a go. And what about playing on stage with these actors?
Incredible. I mean, it's amazing. They are just they're just kind of fearless, and they'll go for it, and they're very truthful and open and intelligent, and it's an absolute ride to do.
Excellent.
I feel very, very lucky, actually, yeah.
And then you've got a director who is very much British, except that he's becoming almost transatlantic. He's done a lot of stuff
huge.
in the States.
Yeah, I mean, this is a massive moment.
Sorry, I'm not sure I explained. This is John Tiffany, to me most famous for Black Watch, though I suppose Harry Potter and the Cursed Child might also come into the mix there in talking about fame.
Yeah, I think so. This seems to be a real... I mean, he's like an absolutely amazing director who's, had brilliant productions, Black Watch being, probably the most... Well, then Once as well, and Harry Potter. It's been interesting working with him as Harry Potter's just launched and completely kicked off. But he's amazing, and it's his favourite play. And I do really enjoy working with directors that have very strong visions, and you really they sort of take you on a journey, and you get to see the world through their eyes. And John is, very imaginative and. Yeah, that was really exciting. And Richard Jones is sort of, I mean, they're completely different, but similar in terms of they have these incredible ways of approaching things that you wouldn't necessarily think of.
Yeah, they're kind of almost like auteurs, I suppose.
Yeah.
Kind of very much imposing their own vision, as you say, on particularly Richard Jones.
Oh, yeah, Richard Jones.
I kind of have mixed feelings. Some of Richard Jones' productions I absolutely love, some of them I don't get on with. But what he does is he will take you a long way away from the original in an effort to create something special.
Well, and I go, that's when you're going to get something special, isn't it? And you've got someone that takes a risk, or actually they're not even aware, it's not about taking a risk, it's just that's how they see what they put on stage is what they see in their head, and that I find I like to be part of that sort of creative process. And working with Stephen Hoggart as well, their John, Tiffany and Stephen Hoggart's dynamic is fantastic. And I am an actor, I'm not very cerebral in my approach at all to work, and I find it very useful to have a kind of physical key in, which is how Stephen works, because you can find out a lot about a character through the physical language, and I find that quite useful as a starting point.
So am I going to see similar moves to the ones in Harry Potter then? Because he was also movement director on that.
Get two wands out there. No, it's really well, I don't know. It's quite different. It's quite different.
What are you making of Edinburgh? Have you been up here for the Fringe or the festival before?
I've never done the festival. Isn't that bad?
So you've never done the Fringe? You're going straight into the International Festival.
I know. At 31, but So it's great. I mean, it's only today that I just saw, what did I see, Interiors at the Lyceum?
Yeah,
I saw that.
Which again is International Festival.
Festival. But we've been up since Monday, and I, for that tech week, we've just been walking from my flat 5 minutes to the theatre, then back, maybe to the pub, and then back to the flat. So I'm about to have my Edinburgh cherry taken. Properly.
So you're going to have a proper binge.
Oh yes, I'm going to binge. I want to see it.
You've got to make the most of it.
Oh yeah, I mean it's incredible buzz around the place, and so I'm excited about that. And it's such a beautiful city, kind of magical city, really. So
how did you? I'm not sure which end. I'll start with the end of the life. How did you end up getting cast in this? Because as we say, there were 3 American actors, or series of American actors. It's an American play from America, and you're the one Brit in there. Did you ask to do it?
No, it came out of the blue. I just had a call saying John wanted to meet me.
And you've not worked with him before?
I've not worked with him before. I met him before just kind of at events, and I always liked his work, and he was always really nice, and and he wanted to have a chat about law, and I was like, great. And I'd seen the play about 3 times, but I'd never read it, and I always, when I saw it, loved it. It's a brilliant play.
Yeah.
And he said, did you know the play? And I said, well, I've seen it 3 times. And he said, well, I thought you'd either didn't know the play or it'd be your favourite one. I said, well, I absolutely love it. And I said, I want to play her. And then he just went, well, you're playing her. And that was it. It was the easiest meeting I've ever had. So it was very nice.
That's impressive casting.
Yeah, it was great. And so that's how it came about. So very lucky, really.
Has your whole career been like that? How did you get into acting to start? Well,
of course not. No.
Just wondered.
I don't know, so I didn't mean to.
Has your whole career... Did you start off wanting to be an actress when you were a child?
Always wanted to be an actress, never really questioned.
Is it run in the family? Or?
No. I mean, my mum does amateur dramatics, but no one's in the business at all. But I just always wanted to do it. Kept it kind of fairly quiet for a while, just slightly embarrassed about talking about wanting to, do a profession that is sort of precarious. But then went to the Royal Exchange Youth Theatre, and that was when I sort of started to meet these people that actually work in that world, and then auditioned and got into drama school, and but it's it's been peaks and troughs and slow at times, but in the last few years it's been good, touch wood.
And you've done a lot of work on film now as well, so Mike Leigh, bit of a Mike Leigh specialist?
I don't know if I worked with him twice, and I mean basically my first job was pretty much with Mike on Happy Go Lucky. I graduated and then was working with him for the best part of the year, because Sally Hawkins is the lead character in that, and I was playing her sister, and the way he works is, you build up a character's whole life, and so I was very much part of her family, so that's why I was on it for a long time, and then just popped into Mr. Turner just for a scene, and I mean he's amazing, he's an author, and amazing, and has been a really lovely mentor actually, and he champions actors, and he'll go and see everybody's shows, and he's still got that amazing curiosity, which again is sort of a feature of I think the best directors. They don't get cynical, they're always interested and curious about the outside world and people and things.
And TV? Get some accompanying music from somewhere. TV,
I've been doing, it's just been a mixture, just been filming episodes of a series called No Offence by Paul Abbott, who created Shameless, and he's an amazing writer. So we're doing the second series of that, sort of in between this. But I mean, theatre is my first love, really.
I love to hear it when people say that. And you still get the buzz. Well, I would hope, being in the Edinburgh International Festival, you're getting some kind of a buzz being on the stage.
I mean, but it's been such a lovely, relaxed, calm process. I think because with this show, because it's a production that's been done before, even though three of us are brand new to it, but we know it works, and it's just been, it's not been totally anxiety-inducing, which is good.
Is there any expectation that it will go anywhere else?
Maybe, I don't know. I think I'm just going to treat it as really enjoy these 2 weeks. I mean, I'd hate to say goodbye after 2 weeks to that play, but, what'll be will be, we'll see.
That's kind of the nature of Edinburgh, or it can be.
Yes, yeah.
So do you know what you have ahead?
Just doing No Offence, and then we'll see what's in the future after that. I've got, I'm in the new Bridget Jones film, and that's coming out in September, so that'll be an interesting time.
From Mike Leigh to Bridget Jones.
It's quite a change, yeah. But we'll see.
Kato Flynn, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Edinburgh welcomes all kinds of shows, and one of the most unusual is Ghost Quartet playing in the Summerhall Roundabout. Its creator is Dave Malloy, who's with me. He's brought this one over from the States. It played off Broadway and to great success, and he's also done other work as well. In particular, Natasha, Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, which has become a kind of cult hit and is heading for Broadway, where it's opening in November. So Dave, welcome.
Hello, welcome.
First of all, are you enjoying the Edinburgh experience? I presume you've not been here before.
I actually was here before. I was here 5 years ago with a show at Assembly, a show called Beowulf, 1,000 Years of Baggage, which was a rock opera based on Beowulf. So I got my first Edinburgh experience there, and that was a massive show. There were 17 of us all living in a giant flat off the meadows, and we were busking every day, and we had a show at 4 p.m, so every night we were going and seeing everything we could, and it was an amazing time. So I'm so happy to be back.
And Ghost Quartet fairly obviously has 4 people.
Yes, it does. We got 4, and then we travel with a director and designer, so it's just a very tight, just the 6 of us.
I did my best in my 5-star review to describe it, but it's pretty much indescribable, so why don't I throw that on to you? So tell us what the intention was, what the background is, Edgar Allan Poe, Fall of the House of Usher.
All those things. Yeah, so we call it a chamber musical about love, death, and whiskey. And so it is a chamber musical. There's just 4 of us on stage, and the 4 of us are the singers and the musicians, so we're playing a variety of different instruments. And we actually kind of took our cue from a lot of rock and roll concept albums, looking at like Pink Floyd's The Wall or David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust, and use that as kind of our storytelling technique. And that all of those things share that they tell a narrative, but the narrative is a bit obscure. And it's really more about writing these songs, and these songs that are thematically linked, and the songs that give you an emotional response. So there is a narrative, within our show, but it's definitely hidden under several layers of obfuscation. And so to that end, also, we introduce each song as we treat the show as a 2-record album. So each song is introduced by what side it's on and what track it is. So side 1, track 1, side 3, track 4. We go through the songs like that.
And do you want to talk us through who the other performers? Well, you play keyboards amongst other. Everyone plays amongst other things.
Yes.
You play keyboards amongst other things.
Yeah, so I play the keyboards and a little bit of ukulele. We all play a bunch of percussion, and then I'm joined by there's an amazing cello player, Brent Arnold, who also plays the erhu, which is a 2-stringed Chinese instrument, and he also plays a lot of percussion. And then the 2 leads of the show are these 2 incredible women, these 2 singer-songwriters that I've known for years. Gelsey Bell, who plays the metallophone, which is a bell-like xylophone kind of. It's actually a child's instrument.
She's taking keys on and off it as she plays as well during the show.
It's a Carl Orff instrument that's like it was made for children. So your kids might have played it in kindergarten, but it is that thing where you can take the bars on and off and so make it sound like a nice scale and change the scales. So she's playing that. Also a little bit of kalimba. And then the other woman is Britton Ashford, who mostly plays the auto harp, which is also kind of an educational folk instrument. It's you press buttons and it plays a chord.
And they both sing beautifully with contrasting voices.
Yeah, yeah, and truly, and both of those women are actually in my show that's headed to Broadway, Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812. And they have smaller roles in that show. And as we were working on that show off Broadway, I just became obsessed with both of their voices. And literally the 4 of us, so those 2, Brent, the cello player, and myself, were sitting around at Brent's apartment playing the board game Risk and drinking whiskey one night, and we were just having a great time. And I kind of looked around the table and I said, wow, you 3 are like my favorite musicians in New York. Let's write a show. Let's do a show for you, for the 4 of us, and specifically for Britton and Gelsey to kind of show them off and do everything that they can do with their voice.
And it's toured a bit in the States?
Yeah, toured quite a lot. Yeah, so we started in New York in a very small and wonderful theater in Bushwick called the Bushwick Star, and then we moved into Manhattan to the McKittrick Hotel, which is where Sleep No More is currently playing. And then since then, we've traveled all over. We went, upstate and did it around a campfire near Woodstock. We did it in Boston at ART. We did it in San Francisco at the Curran Theater. We've been around LA. We've been in Dallas. So we've kind of toured all around the States. But this is our first time internationally.
And are you enjoying it as an Edinburgh show? You're playing it at the Roundabout, which is in the round, as the name suggests. Is that making it easier, more difficult? Is that what we're used to anyway?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a change. We typically do stage it somewhat in the round. We kind of have a big blank space in the middle, and the audience typically has been kind of in 3 sections. Yeah. So the women have kind of been at one. It's more of a triangle is what we've usually done. So the women at one point, and then Brenton at the other 2 points, and the audience all around us. But so the show is very much immersive in nature. So the round setting actually works for us beautifully, and our director got a chance to kind of do some new storytelling with it, and she was loving it. And our lighting designer is amazing, and the lighting system at the Roundabout is phenomenal and crazy. And,
it is remarkable. I've seen pretty much everything in there, and it's so flexible, so versatile. Bearing in mind they're using virtually no power, I gather.
Yeah, I guess it's
all
like
kind of low cost. It's
355 individual LED lights or something. I might have gotten the number wrong, but it's something insane. But yeah, so it's been so great to do it in the round. And again, because the show is immersive, we're actually trying to recreate the feeling of telling ghost stories around a campfire. So it feels very appropriate that we're in the round and that the audience is a part of the show. Just as.
And are you finding a British audience the same as an American one, or are you noticing differences?
I haven't noticed anything for certain. I think the show definitely elicits very polarizing reactions to people, depending on how attached to narrative you are. So I think for the people that can kind of let go and have an emotional experience and let the music and kind of the feeling of the show take you, I think those people have a very positive experience. And then if you're looking for more of a clear-cut linear narrative, then the confusion is created. So I think maybe in Edinburgh we've had a little bit more people coming in not quite knowing what to expect. Yeah.
It's also, you're playing it as what well, the Roundabout regards a late night show, but in Edinburgh, late night's 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
But it is probably the right time to play it.
Yeah, we're at 9 p.m., which is, I mean, there is a whole section in the dark of our show, so definitely the nighttime feels correct.
Okay, let's move forwards and backwards simultaneously, actually. So Natasha, Pierre, that has been an amazing success. When you wrote it, did you expect it would be a success at all? Did you expect it to go to Broadway?
Oh, I certainly didn't expect it would go to Broadway. No, I mean, I knew, as we were writing it, I was working with an amazing director, Rachel Chavkin, and the source material, obviously it's based on Tolstoy's War and Peace, so the source material was great. And we started it at a very small theater in Manhattan called Ars Nova, and we just managed to somehow assemble an incredible cast for that first run, and Ars Nova was incredible, and Rachel was amazing, and we had this beautiful set designer who kind of made this Russian dinner club for us to set it in. So as the show was happening, we were like, oh, this is a special combination of things that has gotten together. But we had no idea that it would still be happening 4 years later and opening on Broadway. That was quite a surprise. Yeah.
And adapting War and Peace, that doesn't sound that easy to do. It's theoretically millions of pages, about 1,500 pages. Wonderful novel, but
it's actually a very specific slice of it. So it's about a 70-page section that basically just follows Natasha is engaged to Andre. Andre is off at war, and while Andre is off at war, Natasha falls for this villainous rogue named Anatole, and so they kind of have an affair that ends up ruining Natasha. And simultaneously, Pierre is kind of going through an existential midlife crisis. And so he's kind of devolving and just drinking a lot and reading all this philosophy and, on the brink of killing himself. And then at the end of the show, these two stories intersect and Natasha and Pierre meet and something wonderful happens.
And taking it from small-scale, intimate, I suppose, to Broadway... You're obviously not going to criticise too much anyway, but you may be loving every moment of it. But has it kind of changed your perceptions? Has it been difficult? Have there been things where you've had to compromise?
No, actually not at all. If anything, the show has just become more and more fully itself as we've gotten bigger. So when we first staged it, we were in this very small, intimate theater. It was 89 seats, I think. And so, part of obviously what everyone loved about the show is that the actors there was no stage. The actors were just running all around the audience, and it was this very intimate experience that felt very Tolstoyan. It felt very much like we're here with all of humanity telling this story. But what we found is as we've gotten bigger, we've been able to hold on to that. So we've just increased the size of our house, we've also increased the size of our ensemble, and we've kind of made the staging even more radical. So when we're in proscenium houses, we're still running out into the houses and building rampways and staircases into the proscenium. And at the end of the day, it's War and Peace. It's the most giant novel ever written. So actually, that sense of scope and grandeur has done nothing but improve the piece. It's just now the piece is with every enlarging of the show becomes more of what it always wanted to be.
And what about on the casting front? Because Broadway these days requires big-name casting.
Sure. I mean, actually, amazingly, a lot of our cast members are people from the original Ars Nova run, from that original 1819 theater, including Gelsey and Britton, who are the two stars of Ghost Quartet. So it's been amazing. And they actually were both in the first workshop of War and Peace as well, so they've really been with it from the very, very beginning. So it's amazing to watch their hard work pay off into a Broadway run. And then the biggest casting change that we've done is I originally played the role of Pierre, but after we performed off-Broadway, a little-known singer named Josh Groban came by and really enjoyed the show. So when we were talking about transferring to Broadway, he was also looking for a Broadway show at the same time, and it was just such a fortuitous combination of events. So he is now playing the role of Pierre, which I am absolutely thrilled about, because it actually means I've written a new song for Pierre to play, a song that I never could have possibly sung, because now I actually have a Pierre who can really sing. I have this very gruff rock and roll voice, which can do a certain thing well, but that's about all it can do. Whereas Josh obviously has this phenomenal instrument. So it's been amazing to kind of let the role again become more of what it always wanted to be by having a singer of that stature take it on. Yeah.
And the question I clearly shouldn't ask: do you not feel really resentful that your place on a Broadway stage, your Broadway debut, is being taken by a famous performer?
I truly don't feel that way at all. I mean, it still is my Broadway debut.
Of course, yeah.
But no, I don't feel that way at all. I would love to, if knock on wood, if the show runs for how many years, I'd love to step in at some point for 2-3 weeks, just to say I've done it. But the other reality of it is, I found when I was doing it off Broadway that the reality of like the 8-show week and like the kind of Broadway performer schedule, it actually makes it very difficult to compose. Like it makes it very difficult to kind of get the headspace that you need to have in order to write other things. So I'm, writing other shows right now. So I'm writing a adaptation of Moby Dick and an adaptation of Shakespeare's Henriette. So I'm actually thrilled not to have that 8 shows.
And they're both musical adaptations?
They're both musicals as well, yeah.
I can see or hear Moby Dick immediately. I can see how that would work. The Henrys, now that's something quite different.
Yeah, the Henrys is more, that's more of a proper book musical, so there are, extended book scenes of the Shakespeare, and then that's actually, both of those shows are collaborations with my director, Rachel Chavkin, who's also in town.
With the team, yes.
With the team,
in fact, I'm seeing Revolt. She said again, Revolt?
No, that's not her. It's Anything That Gives Off.
So, yeah, it's the International Festival. Sorry, yes. Which I'm seeing tomorrow, I think.
Oh, very good. I'm seeing it next week. Yeah.
Excellent.
So that one actually, the Henriette is kind of Rachel's dream project.
Yeah.
Like that's always been her favorite Shakespeare. So she's actually writing the adaptation for that. So she's picking what Shakespeare, and then she's actually writing new scenes as well that kind of look at, and it's following basically just Hal's journey.
Right.
So Hal and his father and Hal and Falstaff, and she's kind of recasting those scenes with a contemporary.
So effectively going through Henry IV, both parts, and Henry V.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Tracking backwards, so you are about to become famous Broadway superstar in a couple of months' time.
Yeah.
How did you start out? Presumably you've always been musical in the wider sense.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely studied music in school, and I actually started off as a jazz piano player. So there's little hints of that in Ghost Quartet, actually. But yeah, I started off just as a pure musician and really didn't have much interest in theater. I did like some high school, musicals. I did the high school musicals. But in college, I really didn't do any theater at all. And then I moved to San Francisco, and I was like playing in some weird bands and working at a record store, and someone just asked me to be...
Just out of interest, what kind of weird bands? What kind of music?
Let's see. Well, in my early days in San Francisco, I was in a band called Plum, which we called ourselves an electro-jazz trio.
Right.
So it was, keyboards, piano, and bass, but we were doing a lot of like live drum and bass music and stuff like that. I had all kinds of effects and stuff. And so yeah, it was that kind of thing. And then I just kind of stumbled into the theater, and someone asked me to do a show, and I had fun doing it, and then out of that show the director asked me to do another show, and then another show, and this is all in San Francisco in like around 2000 or so. And then through that circle I met the artistic directors of Banana Bag and Bodice, which is a was San Francisco but now Brooklyn-based theater company that I came to Edinburgh with 5 years ago with Beowulf, 1,000 Years of Baggage. So I met them then and started doing shows with them, and I really started off kind of doing more, this is all, very black box, DIY, fringy theater that we were doing, very experimental and weird, and I was doing more sound design and kind of soundscapes, but then little by little, I would write a song for the show, and then 2 songs for the next show, and then 3 songs for the next show, and after like 4 or 5 years of doing that, I had, unexpectedly written a full musical, and I was like, oh, I just wrote a musical, that was fun, maybe I'll do it again. And so from there I just started writing musicals, and then Beowulf was kind of actually my first big success as a musical theater composer, and we had a great time with that show, and that show also toured all around and came to Edinburgh, and then it went to Australia and Ireland and lots of other places, and and then actually Beowulf was seen by Ars Nova, and then Ars Nova asked me to write another piece, and I very sheepishly pitched them, well, I have had this idea in the back of my head for a long time about doing this one section of War and Peace, and I certainly expected them to say, well, let's try something smaller first, but no, they were all in for it.
And did they introduce you to Rachel Chavkin?
Rachel and I actually met also through the Banana Bag and Bodice people, through Jason and Jessica, who did Beowulf, because she came and saw Beowulf, and we met for drinks after that, and then we worked on a show up at Vassar College together. It was our first show together, and then we also worked on a show called 3 Pianos, which was at New York Theater Workshop and ART in New York, and that was a show about Schubert's Winterreise. Yeah.
Yeah, you're certainly ambitious, no question.
I really like the classical texts. Yeah. I was an English literature major and music composition major in college, and that's really stuck with me. So most of my pieces have some kind of old piece of text at their center. And Ghost Quartet is certainly that too. Like Ghost Quartet plays on Scheherazade and, as you said, Edgar Allan Poe. And it actually also plays on old Stephen King novels and The Twilight Zone and all these kind of like fantasy genre, sci-fi horror things that I loved as a kid. Yeah.
When you're creating a piece, is it the director you work? I mean, who decides exactly what it's going to be, which way it's going? Is it just you, or do you use someone else, kind of dramaturge?
Well, for the pieces I work on with Rachel certainly is the dramaturg. So she's, in most of our pieces, she's been with it from the initial inception, and so we've kind of always been bouncing ideas off of each other. And she's the first person I'll send the script to, and she'll send ideas back. But with Ghost Quartet, it was a little different. That Ghost Quartet, we kind of conceived the show as like we're a band, so we're going to become a band called Ghost Quartet, playing an album called Ghost Quartet as a theatrical show called Ghost Quartet. Yeah. So with that show, they were kind of my dramaturg. So I just kind of like spilled a whole bunch of like text and ideas to them, and we read through them, and we discussed them. And then for that show, I would kind of come in with the music and lyrics, like the chord progressions and the melodies and the lyrics. But then we arranged it more as a band would arrange it. So in that one, and then actually in that show, then the four of us did that for a while, and then we realized that none of us really knew how to act. So at that point, we brought in a director, and this amazing director, Annie Tipp, and her designer, Christopher Bowser, kind of made the show more theatrical and staged it and did all the amazing lighting effects and all that. Yeah.
And has that changed significantly being in the Roundabout?
Well, the interesting thing about that show is like pretty much every time we travel with it, like we have to adapt to the space. And the show is very much designed to do that. Like there really isn't a set. Like the set is just the four of us and our instruments. Usually when we did it in the States, we would also have like some rugs on the ground and some chandeliers, and that's it. So yeah, it hasn't really changed any more than it's changed every other time we've done it. We did it around a campfire, and so obviously that we had to change it quite a lot. I think at the Roundabout, the biggest difference has been because we are actually 360 degrees in the round, we did change our configuration. Usually the two women are right next to each other, but now they're facing each other, so we're kind of more in a square. But even that has like opened up all these new storytelling opportunities. Yeah.
And finally, I think from Ghost Quartet, the audience involvement, you really you ask audience members who seem to enjoy it to become very much involved, and actually we try a quartet which suddenly becomes an orchestra.
Yes. We try to look for smiling faces in the audience. We try to give it to people that we think will be engaged and into it, which usually it works well. Sometimes you get someone who's really, really enthusiastic and really wants a drum, and then they get the drum and then they're just terrible. So that's always an awkward moment of trying to figure out how to navigate that. But definitely we knew early on that we wanted this, again, to feel like telling ghost stories around the campfire. So the audience needed to be a part of it. And then, for the ending of the show to work, which I don't want to spoil and give away, but the ending of the show definitely involves the audience. But in order for that to work, we need to introduce that idea earlier in the show. So that's why we have the earlier song with all the tambourines and shakers and everything.
Okay, let me see if I can get all the publicity bits right. So Ghost Quartet is playing at Summerhall Roundabout in Edinburgh. I think it's 9 o'clock in the evening, around about 9 in the evening, till the end of the festival, pretty much.
Yeah, we're on.
You finish on the Sunday.
Every night, but Tuesdays. Tuesdays are our night off.
And you're also selling CDs and I think potentially downloads as well, so people can look that up if they're unable to get to the show. I recommend it.
We're on bandcamp.com. So if you go to bandcamp.com and search for Ghost Quartet, you'll find us. Also, if you go to my website, davemalloy.com, the link is right there.
And Natasha, Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 is going to be running on Broadway. I say, is it November when it starts previewing?
No. We start previews in October, and then we open on November 14th at the Imperial Theatre.
Fantastic. Well, I wish you well with everything that you're doing at the moment.
Thank you much.
Thanks so much, Dave.
Thank you.